So the next step that we will do is get some data in there. It'd be nice to see some data going on. Now to do this, I'm going to use a different type of parameter. We now have a read component. We can also create a writable component. And the purpose is that I can select a value and that this will update in my parameter. So let's go back to my protocol and try and think of what I need to do. For this specific parameter, I would like to make a writable component. So what I could do is start all over again, create use a snippet, create a writable type. So instead of type read, I'm going to update this to write, and then try and know what type of values I need to fill in. So I'm already a bit confused because I will need to guess a lot. Maybe there will be a snippet in there to make a writable component. But again, how do I link it with this specific param? So there must be a nice way or a better way to do this. Well, there is. You can see this little arrow next to my param ID 10. Well, I can click on this and it will give me some extra options. What do I want to do linked with this specific parameter? I want to generate a writable one. So I'm going to click on this, see what happens. I get a nice wizard. I can actually say I want my parameter ID. Parameter IDs always need to be unique. I want to identify something using this unique ID. Well, I want it to have a specific offset. Now, why would I want to have a specific offset? Why not just randomly generate an ID? I want to keep my development structured. It could be that I have plenty of these read and write combinations, or when I will look into my development, I want to see some logical structure in there to make it easier for me to add extra features in there, or to investigate something, to figure out where is that write, what is linked to it, and so on. So again, these are house rules that you can define yourself. Now in my case, I'm going to use the offset of 50. This is my default. I can change this. I can say, well, I don't want 50. I'm going to update my wizard in here, so it already updates to 20. Now, as mentioned, I'm going to use 50. My write param ID will be 60. I can see that it's linked to read ID 10. My writable ID will be 60. The name of this new param will be exactly the same as my read. And that's why it's all in one line. The description, again, will be exactly the same as my read. This combination, that's how DataMiner knows, both internally and on visual side, how it should connect. I need to link this read to this write, or this write to this read. Like, imagine that you have that automation thing running again. Well, that one will do a set, and you can enable a check there to say, I want to verify if my set was actually successful. What it will do is verify if the read component was updated correctly with the value you wanted to set. That means DataMiner somehow needs to know what the link is, but it's not protocol that needs to know it, it's another component, and that's where the description also needs to be the same. Internally, externally, the name description must be the same. That's the link. Now, another component that I see here is setter. What's a setter? It will set something. So actually, I'm going to use this in my example because it will copy the value from my writable component into my readable component. So from the write to the read, just put it in there. It will not send out any requests to an external data source. It is simply copy whatever you have in that writable box, copy it to my read box, all here in my protocol. but will not go and do something else, simply copying. Now, when do we use this? For specific protocol-only configuration. Like, I don't want to start pulling information unless this configuration is set enabled. That configuration, that will have this setter available. And when we go to an SNMP communication, I wanted to set an SNMP value on my data source. So I'm going to send out, I want to trigger, initiate to send out an SNMP set request. And after the set returned a acknowledgement, I want to get an updated value again. And that's the SNMP set and get. Now in our case, we don't have an SNMP parameter, we don't have an SNMP connection, but I do want just to copy the value, so I'm going to use that setter. Click OK, and something happened. Well, it actually created the structure that I needed. And you can see it's really copy-pasting mostly what I have defined in my readable param. So this way, I'm pretty sure I will not make any typos or mistakes, and this writable component will be linked to my read. It will use the same range as my analog bar is saying. That means that in my writable component, I will have a slider and it will be limited to that range that I have defined. It will be displayed on the same pages as I have defined for my read. Now, maybe I don't want this to be shown in my main page, but I do want this configuration possible in my data page. I can again go to my display editor. I have my main, and you can see I have here in the same component box read-write flags. I'm going to disable the write from this component, and it's still there on my data page. This means in my, for instance, these are all my KPIs on this page. These are all read-only components. It will give me an overview of the status of my data source, for instance. And my data page is actually a configuration page. I can do more specific items with this, and I will keep my writable item in here. It is still the same parameter, so I don't need to define it multiple times. Now, another thing I want to point out is that I now have two items here in my parameters list. I have my ID number 10, my parameter as name, and I have my ID 60 with my param as name. IDs must be unique. Name on its own should be unique by different components, but the read and the write share the same name. So if you're really strict, a name is not unique because you have the same name for read and the write items. Of course, I want to make another parameter. I will need to make a different name so that we, while developing, can make a difference between the two components. I'm going to apply this change, and I'm going to publish this so I can see my result. So let's move back to my DataMiner setup and have a look at the result. So in the background, again, the publish will update my protocol and it will restart my element and apply my changes. And on my main view, we just want to see the read value, and that's what we still have here. On my data page, however, I wanted to have a read and write component. I have my read and I have a writable value as well. And as expected, I have a range slider here between 0 and 10. Now I'm going to just apply this. What will happen is a pop-up, and it's on my second screen. Let me show you. I get a pop-up indicating, do you really want to set this value? I will hit yes, and you can see my read param has updated. I go back to my main page, it's updated as well, because this is the same parameter. Now let's change this to number 5, and I get a nice indication in my analog bar as well. Same for this one.